Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or why are you up so late? Welcome to A World of Turtles. My name is Jordan Gray, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Coordinator with Turtle Survival Alliance. And there is no better way, as we wait for people to join in this webinar, than to introduce one of my very favorite shelled friends. This is Geronimo, and I'll kind of show him off a little bit here. Geronimo is an ornate or western box turtle. They are native to the western and midwestern United States from Illinois west to Arizona. And interestingly enough, in this year's latest revision of this species's taxonomy, the desert box turtle, Terrapin ornata luteola and Terrapin ornata ornata were synonymized as Terrapin ornata. So right now they're being considered one species, and I'm sure there's many people out there who will disagree about that, and maybe we'll see them separated into subspecies again. But again, while we wait for people to talk about a world of turtles, I do want you all to see this beautiful animal. This is a male. He is at adult size. And one of the things you might be able to see on your screen there is that Geronimo has this beautiful lime green head. And that is one of the characteristics of males and sometimes females of this species. And they can be of various shades of green all the way to a steely blue color. And you might see Geronimo has red eyes, which is also common with males of this species. And just this absolutely gorgeous striated shell. That'll be the next big thing. Is it black on yellow or is it yellow on black? For you to decide. Either way, this coloration and pattern really helps this turtle blend into its preferred prairie and grasslands habitats and scrublands, perfectly mimicking the vegetation and the dappled sunlight coming through. So I just wanted you all to, of course, start a world of turtles with a turtle. So I'll put Geronimo down and we will get to it. So by the way, I am not alone in this. I'm never alone. There is a world of turtle enthusiasts out there. We are one big turtle community, all with the bond that we love turtles. But also to my left or to my right, however one may see it in the Zoom, maybe even top or bottom, is David Hedrick. And David Hedrick is our media specialist with Turtle Survival Alliance, and he is my co-host for tonight. And David will actually be helping me look at answers when I ask questions. And for the Q&A portion of our webinar tonight, David will be reading your questions aloud. So a few housekeeping rules there. I will be asking the audience questions, and I'll give you a minute or two to put your answers in. And when you put your answers in, you'll want to do so in your chat option. If you have an actual question for me, however, for our Q&A, feel free to, of course, type it in at any time into the Q&A feature in our webinar. And that's where David, the goose to my maverick, will jump on and ask me those questions. And there's quite a bit to get through, but I really want to be able to answer your questions as well as possible. And if not, hopefully my good friend Peter Paul Van Dyke is on the other side, watching, listening, and ready to fill in should I not know the answer to a question, which did happen in 1987. So there's always another chance that it could happen again. So moving on from a world of turtles, first, this is hosted by the Turtle Survival Alliance. And I do have to first tell you, about the TSA. The question is, who is the TSA? Should you not be aware? And I see some people are raising their hands. If you want to go ahead and put your question in the Q&A or the chat, David will be able to answer you directly. Maybe it's something that we can get to now, or maybe it's something we can get to later. But I really do appreciate that hands are already being raised. Hopefully it's not that you can't hear me, because that would be quite bad. But first of all, who is the TSA? Well, there is the Transportation Security Administration, but we are not them. Interestingly enough, the TSA that one finds at an airport came about after the Turtle Survival Alliance. So the Turtle Survival Alliance began in 2001 as a task force of the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and then just a few years later became its own nonprofit. So for more than 20 years, we have had a commitment towards zero turtle extinctions in the 21st century. So what makes TSA really special is that we're made up of a diverse assemblage of organizations, institutions, and individuals with a passion for saving turtles. And for many of us, that started at a young age, some later in life, but it doesn't matter when you start, you have the ability to make an impact for turtles and their conservation. And together with our partners, the TSA is the largest and most comprehensive tortoise and freshwater turtle conservation organization on Earth. And really, strategic partnerships are our core strength, plus a bunch of really extraordinary people. And those are individual turtle conservationists who dedicate their lives to saving turtles. And we want to highlight them. So, starting Earth Day, which was April 22nd, through World Turtle Day, which is May 23rd, we are highlighting turtle heroes, people who make the difference for not only our programs, but other programs across the world, working with endangered and critically endangered turtles to ensure that they have a future on this planet. And many of the people you see highlighted are really the unsung heroes of these programs and projects, people who maybe you haven't seen before in the media, maybe somebody who hasn't won the most prestigious award in turtle conservation, which is the Baylor Kilonian or Turtle Conservation Award. And this is a chance for you to be able to see that impact that they have. And the best way to be able to see that is to follow us on our social media channels. So all those icons that you see, as well as on our website. We have a whole month of activities planned, all that really revolve around turtle heroes. But to get to turtle heroes, we need to be able to understand this world of turtles that we live in. So, okay, fine. Shameless plug here. World Turtle Day is May 23rd. And this year we are featuring the Burmese roof turtle, one of the most endangered turtles in the world, on the front of this shirt or jersey or tank top or hoodie or whatever apparel item you might be interested in. And you can go to our website, turtlesurvival.org, to find out how you can get this one-of-a-kind commemorative shirt. And by buying those, you'll be helping those. And that right there is a hatchling Burmese roof turtle. And by the way, in 2021, the TSA and our partners, the Myanmar Forest Department and the Wildlife Conservation Society, hatched a record number of Burmese roof turtles in their native Myanmar. So that was a huge highlight for a program that has seen a lot of trials and tribulations over the last about year and a half during such time that there has been a coup. The military has seized control of the democratically elected government in Myanmar, but I'm really, really proud to tell you that the program there is still running. Turtles are still being saved, turtles are nesting, eggs are hatching, and that's really a testament to those turtle heroes who are dedicating their lives. So let's start at the very basics. What is a turtle? And for some of you watching, maybe many of you watching, you're like, okay, that's pretty simple. So this kind of takes you back to maybe high school or college and talking about your different levels of taxonomy. I don't know if you all remember the King Philip came over for good spaghetti, but that was at least the way that we learned it, our taxonomy. So first of all, turtles are animals. They're in the kingdom Animalia. They are chordates. They are in the phylum of Chordata. So they have a spinal cord. They are reptiles. So they are in the class Reptilia, and they are in a superorder called Chelonia. And that's why turtles and tortoises are called chelonians. And then last but not least, they are in an order called Testudines. So we have chelonians and Testudines, and that is what you will very commonly find turtles to be called by. All right, next in What is a Turtle? Taxonomy continued. So there are two very general types of turtles, two suborders, and those are your cryptodyrans and your pleurodyrans. So very simply put, cryptodyrans are ones that in many places of the world, that is your common turtle. Those are our hidden neck turtles. So let's think of a box turtle. Let's think of a European pond turtle. Let's think of a radiated tortoise. Okay, those are all hidden neck turtles or cryptodyrans. But in some areas of the world, species that predominate are pleurodyrans. So something like what is pictured there, that is Mesoclemys dali, that is the Dall's toad-headed turtle, or your snake-neck turtles of Australia, or your twist-neck turtle of South America. Those are your pleurodyrans. So there are 14 extant, and by the way, I might say extant a few times, and that just means living. So 14 living families of turtles, of which there are 97 genera. And when I say genre, I am saying genus in plural. So we have our genus and our species, and for many species, we have our subspecies. So the genre is at the genus level. So for instance, the Burmese roof turtle is in the genus Batagur, and their species name is Tributata. So that gets me to my next point. What's a common name versus a scientific name? So all turtles on Earth are given a scientific or a Latin name. And these are binomials or trinomials. And so a binomial is given for a species that just has one representative. And a trinomial is given for a species that have subspecies within them. So for instance, our eastern box turtles of basically the central part of the United States and over. The genus is terrapin, the species is Carolina, and there are various subspecies such as Carolina, or Carolina bowery, or Carolina triungus, or Carolina major. There are many different species out there with subspecies. Now, personally, I like to look at everything on the subspecies level. And that there's a bit of disagreement amongst the turtle community. Some look at things just on the species level, my only argument there is, and it's mostly when I'm talking about things, is so let's say you were to find, and again, I'll just use the example of box turtles. What if you were to find a Florida box turtle? Okay, what are you going to call it? What are most people going to call it? They're going to say, well, that's a Florida box turtle. Well, yeah, but that's a subspecies of eastern box turtle. And there are some taxonomists now who consider that to be its own species, terrapin boweri. But in many contexts, it is still terrapin Carolina boweri. But getting back to what I was saying is we would call it a Florida box turtle because the rest of us would call a terrapin Carolina an eastern box turtle. So it really depends on whether you're talking at the species or subspecies level. I tend to think in subspecies level because there are those differences that we tend to set apart. And that's very much then where we go to the common names. And turtles have this Latin or scientific name, which for the most part doesn't change unless there is a taxonomic revision. So such as the red-footed tortoise used to be Geochelone carbonaria. Well, now it is Chelonoidus carbonarius. So that's something that's changed. But for common names, there can be many, many common names. And that might just be, well, I just said red-footed tortoise, but in the areas they live in South America, they may be called something else. There may be another common name. So a common name is very much just what we go by, what we commonly call them, but then it can also be very much colloquial. So I might call the Burmese roof turtle the Burmese roof turtle, but in the area of the upper Chinwin River in Myanmar where they live, they may very well be called by something else by the locals who live there. So that's why we stick to our Latin or scientific names. So then, okay, there's that other big question, because a lot of people ask, okay, is a tortoise a turtle, or is a sea turtle a tortoise, or is it a turtle? So turtle, tortoise, sea turtle, terrapin, what is the difference? Well, I'm going to make it very, very simple, but then I'll get a little bit dicier, we'll say. So the best way to look at it is that a tortoise is a turtle, but a turtle is not a tortoise. And what I'm saying there is that turtles, tortoises, sea turtles, and terrapins, they are all chelonians. And just in the same way as a tiger is a cat, but I'll bet your cat at home is not a tiger. That's kind of the simplest way I'll put it. But there are also, there are differences. There's reasons that we call these different animals different names. So tortoises have branched off on, into their evolutionary clade they have evolved for this life on land. And they can have various shell characteristics, various morphology, basically the way they look. But overall, they have characteristics for which are suited for a land dwelling life. Now, yes, tortoises will go in shallow water bodies to soak, to drink. They're not great swimmers. So if you find a tortoise, please don't put it in the ocean, as unfortunately does happen around the world. And then what about turtles? Okay, so we just talked about how these are all turtles. Okay, our world of turtles, of tortoises, sea turtles, turtles, and terrapins are all turtles. But when we generally think of turtles, we're thinking of freshwater or brackish water, or semi-aquatic or terrestrial turtles. So for instance, like a box turtle we call that a turtle. It is evolutionarily not in the same grouping as the tortoises. It is evolutionary in the same grouping as your semi-aquatics and your aquatic turtles, even though they live on land. So then what about a terrapin? So this one's interesting. So these names oftentimes vary by region. So in some areas, they just call everything a tortoise. Some areas they call everything a terrapin. Some areas they call everything a turtle. But for the word terrapin, the origin of that is from a Virginia tribe of Algonquin Indians known as the Powhatans and or Powhatans, and there was a word for turtle, and that word was toro. And eventually that word, after English settlers arrived in the New World in Southern Virginia, Southeastern Virginia of the East Coast of the United States, that word eventually became known as terrapin. And it was first used to describe edible turtles. And it was first then describing the diamondback terrapin, so as an edible turtle. And that's another story for another day. But terrapin now very much refers to turtles who spend much of, if not their whole life, in brackish waters. So our diamondback terrapins live in brackish water estuaries and mangrove forests and salt marshes, for instance. While you have in the genus Batagor, you have your river turtles, like the or roof turtles, like the red-crowned roof turtle, but then you have the painted terrapin. And what we see the difference there is the species that we give the common name to in that genus, terrapin, are ones that live or utilize heavily brackish water environments, or even estuaries in which females come out to nest that are of full saline water, full seawater salinity. I kind of bumbled that, but hey. So, and if you have any questions of that, please feel free to type in the Q&A. And if you feel that I've said something incorrectly, hey, we're here to have a discussion. We want to all learn from each other, and maybe I made a mistake and you'd love to pipe in, and I am happy for you to do that. So please feel free to put things in the chat and or the Q&A. So I have my first question, and this one is directed for the chat. Okay, so using your chat feature, how many kinds of turtles are there? Remembering that I am talking about turtles, tortoises, sea turtles, and terrapins. So I'll give you just a minute to take a guess. Maybe I can even put on some Jeopardy music. So, and while I'm doing this, David will be taking a look at the chat and seeing if anybody, except for, of course, Peter, Paul Van Dyke, or Chris Hagen are watching, but to see if anybody got the right answer. So I'll give it a few more minutes here while you all put some answers into the chat. Have David look over those. I see you that there are participants still raising their hand. Please feel free to put your question into the Q&A if your hand is raised, and we'll be glad to get to that, because on my end, I am giving the webinar, and David, remember, the goose to my Maverick, for all you Top Gun lovers out there, he is on the other side taking a look at our chat and our Q&A feature. So I'm gonna give it, let's say, 20 more seconds. So 19, 18, 17, 16. It's almost like a new year of turtles. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. This is getting very exciting. 3, 2, 1, stop. David, Did anybody get the right answer or answers?
We had quite a few that greatly overestimated and quite a few that very much undershot the numbers.
Okay.
We had several guesses that were within 2 and
Oh,
3
wow.
turtles. So,
So definitely within the margin of error.
oh,
But
absolutely.
But is it even a margin of error? Because taxonomy is constantly changing. And before I change my next slide, I am going to prep you with the fact that in the annotated checklist and atlas put out by the Turtle Taxonomy Working Group, which you can find at the Kellonian Research Foundation's website, the number of living turtles is different than it was in their last checklist of 2017. So again, taxonomy is constantly changing. So David, did anybody get it right on the money?
No.
Now, okay. Did I just say now? I think I did. All right, so next slide, a world of turtles. There are currently recognized 352 living species, and I am focusing on living species. There are 10 species that have gone extinct in modern times. The most recent of those being the last member was Lonesome George, the Pinta Island tortoise. He went extinct, the last member of his species, back in 2012. So there are 352 living species. There are 476 living species and subspecies total, so total taxa. Only 7 of those are marine or sea turtles, meaning that 345 are non-marine and 469 types are non-marine. And there's a reason I have that highlighted, and that is because there is this whole beautiful world of turtles out there that is very much unknown to the general public. And that's what we as turtle lovers have to just get out there. If you're a turtle enthusiast, share your passion, share your knowledge. You know, sea turtles, I love them. They're amazing creatures and they get a lot of attention, as well they should. And for wherever you may live, the turtle that is the most common in your area very much is, you know, the commonly known species. So when I ask people here in South Carolina, you know, name different kinds of turtles. Well, I generally get yellow belly slider or red-eared slider or snapping turtle or box turtle or soft shell turtle or sea turtle. And those are all great answers because we you know, we're products of our environment. A lot of our knowledge comes from, you know, what we have lived amongst and around. So it's really important to get that message out there that there's so many other types of turtles, but not just other types of turtles. There are all these kinds of turtles that need our help. But let's first, before we talk about that, talk about turtle types by classification. So I just gave you a pretty hard guessing game. I wasn't going to give you this one because this one's pretty difficult. But of your freshwater, your brackish water, your semi-aquatic, and your terrestrial turtles and terrapins, there are 389 types, so species and subspecies. For tortoises, there are 80 types, species and subspecies. And for your beloved sea turtles, there are 7 types. And if you have any disagreement with that, please feel free to take it up with your local taxonomist. Okay, don't kill the messenger. All right, let's talk about David versus Goliath, because the big versus the small. I get this question all the time. Across the world, you know, what is the smallest turtle and what is the biggest turtle? So let's start off with the smallest turtle. And this is actually one of the more recently described species of turtle. This is the Vallarta mud turtle, which is native to Mexico, Kinosternon voti. This turtle is extremely small. Now, one of the things that I will mention, a little asterisk, is that there hasn't been a lot of research done. There hasn't been a lot of specimens collected yet to really create a large sample size. But what we know to date is that the average size is 10.2 centimeters or 4.02 inches. That is a very, very small turtle. Before that, and what we'll still say is our smallest terrestrial turtle, or a tortoise in this case, is the speckled padloper, Cursobius signatus. And that is at 11.0 centimeters or 4.3 inches. So just barely bigger than your Vallarta mud turtle. And then let's compare those to the giant of the turtle world, the leatherback turtle, the famous turtle, this Goliath turtle that lives in waters all over the earth. It nests in the tropics and the subtropics, but this incredible turtle can basically move all over the world. It can go up as far as Alaska in the north, over in the Western Hemisphere, all the way down to Patagonia, and right near the edge of the Atlantic and Pacific with the Southern Ocean. So these are turtles that are not only the largest turtle on Earth, they're also the fastest swimmer, and they are the deepest diver. So the largest leatherback turtle, and I'm just talking about the shell length, is 226 centimeters or 89 inches. And by the way, 89 inches is over 7 feet. It's around 7.5 feet. So you add in the fleshy parts, the head, the flippers, that is a very, very large turtle. So there are your three in crescendo of David versus Goliath turtles on Earth. A very common question I get. All right, so where do turtles live? That is another common question I get. Well, luckily for us and for turtles, they have evolved to very much occupy habitats around the world. So this is a graphic that shows, and by the way, I do want to give a big shout out again to the Turtle Taxonomy Working Group. Without them, images like this would not be possible. And to the photographers who took these amazing turtle images, of which I've created the cutouts, I just want to say thank you very much, because we would not be able to spread the information that we do without the things that you do. So as you can see, in North America, Central America, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, Australasia, Africa, turtles live across the globe. The only continent that does not have turtles is Antarctica. However, there have been turtle fossils and bones found in Antarctica. Now, once upon a time, all of these continents were connected in this supercontinent called Pangaea. And turtle evolution very much took place during the spreading of these continents. Turtles, by the way, have been around a long, long time. The very first turtle-like creature, the predecessor to our turtle in its present form, is known as the Unodontosaurus. And that basically came about around 260 million years ago. It was a very lizard-like looking animal. For our current modern day turtles, in what is generally their the form you now see, occurred about 80 million years ago. So that's still a very, very long time ago. And those turtles that first evolved into their modern form were in the form of soft-shell turtles. And from then on, for the next 80 million years, they developed they adapted to new environments, to cataclysmic events, and they are now the great diversity of turtles that live across the world that we see today. So using that same picture, let's look at some of our turtle diversity hotspots. Some of us are really, really lucky to live within these hotspots. So as you can see, there are these red and various shades of red, down to pink, down to very light pink. And what you're seeing there is, is your hotspots, your greatest concentration of turtle diversity. I'm very lucky to live in the southeastern United States, which has an extreme abundance of turtle diversity. And there are many places around the world in which turtles are abundant. So I do have my next question for you, and that is, and this is again time for the chat, and David will be tabulating, and I'll give you just a few minutes, what are the top five most turtle-rich countries? And I don't mean the country whose gross domestic product is in turtles. I do mean based on that last slide, what are the top 5 countries on Earth who have the greatest diversity of turtles? And I'm going to give you 2 hints. Hint number 1, only one of the turtles that you see on this slide exists in one of the top 5 countries. Okay, so that's hint 1. And hint 2 is, going back to what I said early on, this is at the subspecies level. So your terminal taxa, the total number of types. So I hope that gives you a little bit of hints to guess by, and I'll give just a couple minutes for you all to put some answers into the chat. And David has the right answers on his side. By the way, I have to tell you, so David is coming to us from Tennessee, a wonderful and beautiful state just north of South Carolina. And it is a very turtle-rich state. There are many accounts of turtles that started a long time ago, originating from such places as Reelfoot Lake, Tennessee. For any of you who grew up reading Archie Carr. Sorry, my phone is ringing. It's probably somebody calling me about a turtle. That is commonly a thing. I do get a lot of calls about turtles. So we're going to give it another minute for you all to put your top 5 turtle-rich countries into the chat. And then we'll give David a minute to look over and see if anyone was able to get all 5. So of course, I must give you the music. Boom, boom. All right, David. Did anybody get the top 5?
There are many answers coming fast and furious.
Fast and furious, like Vin Diesel.
Exactly. And don't think anyone got it exactly. There were lots of people who had 4 of the 5.
That's still pretty darn good.
Or more, absolutely. There were quite a few people who had that. But I think most everyone had at least 1.
Oh, great. Okay. Do you need another minute as they start coming in?
Yep, just a second.
So
Um,
by the way, what's funny is when I started doing the Jeopardy theme song, very poorly, by the way, the computer asked me, "Are you wanting to play audio? Please set up the audio using your professional audio in audio settings." So I guess it kind of got the idea that I was doing audio, but then realized I wasn't doing it well enough. And hey, do you want a professional to do this?
I'm surprised it didn't start to tell you that that could be copyrighted material.
Right, copyright infringement.
Um, yeah, there were quite a few who were just one off.
One off.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of a trick question too, isn't it, David?
It sure is.
All right. Shall I change the slide?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Survey says the top 5 turtle-rich countries on Earth are coming in at number 1, the United States of America, with 88 different types of turtle and tortoise, followed by Mexico with 65 different types of turtle and tortoise. And then in third, we have India with 40 types of turtle and tortoise, followed by Indonesia. And by the way, that was where the clue is. One of the turtles on the screen was a Sulawesi forest turtle, Leucocephalon yuwanawi. And that it comes from the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia. So that was one of your kind of more obscure hints there. But Indonesia in fourth with 39. And then we have a tie between Brazil and Australia. And for any of you living in Brazil or Australia that are tuning in, again, don't kill the messenger. Blame a taxonomist for your country possibly now being tied for fifth. But more interesting than that is when I presented a Turtles of the World webinar in 2020, China was the 5th most turtle-rich country in the world. Well, since the taxonomic revisions, now Australia and Brazil have overtaken China for the number 5 seed. So for all of you who got 4 of those, if you got 3 of those, if you got 2, if you got 1, fantastic job. And if you did get 5 out of 5, maybe it was in the chat, maybe it was just in your head, congratulations, you are a turtle nerd officially. All right, but of course, turtles are in trouble. Sorry, we had to go from that happy note of all of us being turtle nerds to the somber note, but very real note that turtles are in trouble. So over 50% of turtles and tortoises face extinction risk. This is the greatest risk of any vertebrate order on Earth. Currently, 171 species are regarded as threatened with extinction by the IUCN, or International Union for the Conservation of Nature, red list of threatened species of flora and fauna. And this is something we have to take very seriously. And for many organizations around the world, of which TSA is one, we do take this very seriously. As we like to say at TSA, turtle conservation never sleeps. And that is so true. With turtles, as you saw, ranging around the world, and with turtles so threatened right now by a myriad of factors, most of which are human induced. They are animals that need our help. So no matter how big or small your contribution is important to ensuring these species continue to live on Earth. And the TSA does work across the world. And this graphic is, it shows you basically our footprint of collaborative programs that we have around the world to focus on the most at-risk species of turtle, and tortoise, specifically tortoise and freshwater, semi-aquatic, aquatic, and terrestrial turtle. The TSA, although we love them, we do not focus in sea turtles, but that does not mean that we do not have many, many friends and colleagues who dedicate their lives to preserving those amazing turtles. And a little look at TSA by the numbers. TSA positively impacts 20 of the top 25 most endangered tortoises and freshwater turtles. We positively impact 41 of the top 50 most endangered tortoises and freshwater turtles. What's really amazing is that we positively impact well over 100 species of turtle and tortoise. And I think even more amazing than that, especially considering that so many of the endangered and critically endangered species of turtles reside in Asia, is that TSA has made an impact for 100% of the Asian species in the top 50 most endangered tortoises and freshwater turtles. And on top of that, we have we maintain over 500 turtles representing 26 species at our Turtle Survival Center in a little town north of Charleston, South Carolina, by the name of Cross. There we have assurance and breeding colonies for many species which are endangered or critically endangered, some of which are now considered extinct in the wild or presumed extinct in the wild. So I want to get to your turtle questions that you have. But before I do that, I just want to say, how can you learn more about a world of turtles? Because I'm a turtle nerd through and through. As Rick Hudson would say, I'm dyed-in-the-wool turtle nerd. The first great place to start is read a book. There are so many wonderful books out there for you to gain knowledge about this incredible world of turtles. Much of the information that I have given you today and that we use in making decisions is all comes from the Turtle Taxonomy Working Group, which is a collaborative of different organizations and individuals who every few years produce a new checklist and atlas, the newest of which came out in 2021. And if you'd like to download that atlas, you can go to the Kellonian Research Foundation's website and download that checklist and atlas, or you can, of course, purchase the hardcover from the website as well. Follow TSA on social media. We are very, very active on social media and try to give a lot of information about the species we work with, and especially the people who work with these species, the heroes, our turtle heroes who dedicate their lives to saving these species. You can also volunteer with a turtle research project or a conservation group. And you can also send questions directly to me at jgray@turtlesurvival.org. So you love turtles. How can you get involved? Well, you can volunteer with a TSA program, such as our North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group. We have programs across the United States, and this is a fantastic way to get involved, jump in the water. If you don't want to jump in the water or not good at swimming, there's great opportunities for you to paddle a boat or be take data on the turtles. There's educate people who are there to watch the experience. So please feel free to go to our website. You can contact me or David Hedrick directly of how to get involved. Please become a TSA member. That directly helps our programs to preserve and conserve species and their habitats around the world. And of course, you can directly support those programs by becoming a donor. TSA is an organization that runs completely on donations and grants. And so we are very fortunate to have such a supportive community that surrounds us that loves these animals just as we do. And then also other ways in which you can get involved. If you become a TSA member, you're able to receive our latest edition, the 2021 edition of our annual publication, Turtle Survival. You can also contact David Hedrick, again, my co-host, about setting up a drink beer, Save Turtles. And yes, I am sporting the hat. I am never afraid to shamelessly promote such wonderful conservation endeavors as Drink Beer, Save Turtles. And those are really organic opportunities for a tap room or a brewery near you, and other conservation organizations like zoos and aquariums to partner with the TSA and throw these wonderfully amazing events to celebrate turtles, and of course, as fundraisers to fundraise for their conservation. And last but not least, before we get to the questions, I do want to talk about the 20th annual symposium on the conservation and biology of tortoises and freshwater turtles. Folks, this is the largest gathering of turtle and tortoise conservationists on Earth. It is being held once again in person in Tucson, Arizona in August, and that is August 7th through 11th. The graphic there, I apologize, I accidentally threw in the old one. We just recently extended the date, so now it is one more day of turtle fun in the sun in Arizona. And if you have never been to Arizona during the summertime, it is heaven on earth. It is monsoon season. There are reptiles and amphibians out the wazoo, and it's just a wonderful time to be there, get together, talk about turtles, make collaborations, and if you live afar, if you're tuning in today from a far off place, we are looking for people who want to apply for international travel grants, because we would love to hear you speak in person. But if you are not able to travel for some reason from an international location, this year is going to be what I think, and I'd say the rest of the TSA thinks is going to be the best year ever. Because not only are we doing this in Arizona, not only are we doing this in person, but we are going to have a hybrid virtual and in-person symposium. So for international applicants who are not able to travel, even with travel grants available, there are going to be opportunities to still present to basically a room full of many of the greatest turtle minds in the world. So we really look forward to that. But more so, I look forward to your questions. So David, let's hit it. Let's get some questions.
First up, going back to turtles in the fossil record, Mark has a question asking, so technically, modern soft-shell turtles could be considered more closely related to the ancient turtles or the ancient body type than the other turtles we have currently.
Right, and there's some very, very good scientists out there who study the fossilized record of turtles. One who is just fantastic, and he really knows his stuff, is a gentleman named Asher Lichtig, and Asher regularly presents at our symposium, and I don't doubt if he is there again, but he really dedicates his time to learning about this. So if you really want to learn more about the fossil record of chelonians, Asher Lichtig is a great resource. And if you want to get his email, I can give it to you if you should email me. But yes, so the soft shell turtles, that body form, interestingly enough, is at least what paleontologists have found to be the body form that is the predecessor for the current form of turtles. Interestingly enough, however, is that prior to that, there were predecessors to those turtles who did have the hard shells, the bony plates. So the question is, are those just animals that have been found in the fossil record? And so we can make educated guesses as to that is basically, 80 million years ago is where you started to see this evolution of turtles in their current form? Or are we missing something? And that can always be a possibility, because paleontologists are constantly finding new fossils, many of which change and dramatically change what we know about the fossil record. And so that's something that is just absolutely fascinating. And I really appreciate the question, Mark. As somebody who doesn't specialize in the fossilized record of turtles, I personally am not, isn't it? So, I'm allowed to be humble like this. I'm not the best person to give you that answer. And that's why we have this amazing turtle community, because if I can't answer somebody, I know that there is somebody else who absolutely can answer that question to the best of their ability. All right, David, what exciting question do we have next?
Well, like folks from the community chiming in, Peter Paul does remind us that podocnemids are also extremely old in the sense of having very deep evolutionary roots. And another question in relation to distribution. So again, you could chime back to the fossil record with something like this, is from Lynn Risser. Does Great Britain have any turtles at all? And if not, why?
So yes, excellent question. So Great Britain does not actually have native turtles. The closest representative of modern day turtles that live within the realm of the United Kingdom is the European pond turtle. European pond turtle, Emys orbicularis. However, there are various species of sea turtle or marine turtle which will frequent the coasts, however, not nesting on the coasts of Great Britain. And so going back, so I think, and this is one, and I'm so glad, and I knew Peter Paul. So by the way, so Peter Paul, he's one of the world's foremost chelonian experts. He's a good friend of mine. We get together in the spring and in the fall to walk the creeks and do our surveys for North American wood turtles. And I knew he would chime in during that last question. And so yes, with podocnemidae being an ancient lineage of turtles, much like Dermatidae. But Peter Paul might actually be a fantastic resource, or somebody else there who can jump into the chat and give a good answer about that. I personally don't have an excellent answer to be able to give you, and that's where then I lean on the shoulder of a colleague or a friend, or a colleague and a friend, they can be both people, to be able to answer that question as to why. Why are there not native turtles in Great Britain? There certainly, however, are non-native species like red-eared sliders, Cumberland and yellow-bellied sliders, Florida red-bellied turtles, just to name a few, that have been proliferated by the global pet trade. So that's a really good question.
All right.
And I'm sure Peter Paul's sitting there typing a storm as we speak.
Yes. We have the same question from Ryan and Kathleen, and they ask, when will or can people visit the Turtle Survival Center in South Carolina or volunteer at some of your international sites?
That's a fantastic question. So, and by the way, I just love all questions because I love people being interested in learning about these amazing animals. And so how can people get involved with being able to visit our center? So the Turtle Survival Center is it's not a center that is open to the public in a sense like a zoo or aquarium might be. However, we do educational tours there. We do tours for those who might be interested in getting involved more in one of the international programs or more in supporting the TSC. But we have university students, college students, high school students. We have Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops come out and volunteer their time. So the volunteer coordinator for the Turtle Survival Center is Clinton Doak, and I'm sure David can put that in the chat. But that would be C as in cat, Doak, D as in dog, O as in ostrich, A as in aardvark, and K as in kangaroo, C Doak at turtlesurvival.org. And Clint is the one to talk to about not only volunteering, but also about our intern program there at the center. Now, internationally, there are definitely opportunities to get involved, and that is very much through our partner programs. So, for instance, in Sumatra, our focal species there is the painted terrapin, Batagur borneoensis. And Joko Gunturo leads that program through the Satyasita Foundation, of which is TSA's partner. So say one were to live in Sumatra, is being able to get involved in that as a volunteer through Joko, through the Satyasita Foundation. But it's a big world, okay? And I can't guess where everyone lives. So what I would recommend you do if you'd like to get involved is we have a very, very large network. And so please feel free to email me directly. I think I put my email back here. I'll put it back. There we go. It's at the bottom of this slide, jgray@turtlesurvival.org. Feel free to email me. I'm always happy to help people get involved with turtle conservation and volunteering, or eventually, hopefully, if you really, really love turtles and want to make that your life, is becoming a professional turtle conservationist. Great question. Anything else? Or I shouldn't say anything else because I'm a glasses half full kind of guy. So what's the next question, David?
All right. This one is one that can be spoken on at length and debated.
Oh, no, because
yes,
people knowing me know that I can speak at length.
That's true. We all know that. Nathan asks, what is the position or the thoughts of the TSA on turtles in the pet trade and captive breeding, and how keeping turtles positively or negatively impacts these species in the wild?
All right. I get that question asked routinely. And it's a question in which there are not black and white answers. Okay, there are a lot of shades of gray, maybe even about 50 of them, with that answer, or with that question. There's also philosophies. There is emerging data. There is market trends. There's so many factors that go into this. So, for instance, let's just take an example. The sulcata tortoise, also known as the African spurred tortoise, is a species that has been proliferated by the pet trade. However, most people who own those turtles, or maybe I shouldn't say most people, but I'd say a lot of people who own the African spurred tortoise or sulcata tortoise are not aware that this tortoise that roams their backyard is now on the verge of, if not critically endangered in their native habitat in Africa. The tortoises have been exported to such levels, combined, and again, all these things, there's normally a myriad of factors. So you have turtles being collected or poached for the pet trade. You also have just the nonstop threat of habitat destruction. So whether that's for housing developments, for agriculture, for livestock pasture land, for charcoal, et cetera, et cetera. And then also in these areas where there are very, very poor communities, these animals are a source of income, and as long as there is still a willing market, a buying market, these animals can still be sold. So the sulcata tortoise, for instance, it's not where the demand controls the supply, or excuse me, where the supply, the normal economics of supply and demand, where people demand to have these as pets, and so people go out there and get the supply to meet the demand. For that species, it's much more the other way, in that the supply is so much so that it creates the demand. And that maybe is not how it started, but very much so now that sulcatas have been bred and proliferated all across the world, is that they keep being produced in such large numbers that it is very much making, I would say, making people think about having them as a pet, whereas and maybe before they didn't think about having them as a pet. But then let's look at another scenario. Okay, so let's look at the Vietnam pond turtle. Okay, so the Vietnam or Vietnamese pond turtle, Moremys anamensis, just a few years ago was in high demand. This species is critically endangered, and they have been just collected so heavily for the pet and the food markets that the prices skyrocketed on this species of turtle. So several years ago, I mean, I remember back, say 2014, 2015, the price per animal was, you're talking about hundreds of dollars. Well, they were then so quickly bred in captivity and bred so well that they were no longer a commodity. The demand for them crashed, And so now you have a species that is critically endangered, but also one in which the price is now so low that it's the equivalent of some of your very, very, very common pet store turtles like red-eared sliders or map turtles or cooters, just to give you an example. So, you know, does it help? Does it hurt? There are ways in which the supply can diminish the demand. Okay, I own many turtles myself. And I know there's many in the TSA who own many turtles. Okay, and I have turtles of various species in which I keep in large outdoor habitats that have been created to replicate, to the best of my ability or resources, the habitats that they would live in the wild. And so, for instance, I'm not against keeping a turtle as a pet. What I always very much stress, however, is that if somebody wants to keep a turtle as a pet, is one, they do as much research on that turtle as possible. Two, they think about, is this right? Is this the right time to keep the pet? Is keeping a turtle, let's say, in a glass aquarium, in the turtle's best interest? There's so many factors to ask oneself before getting a turtle. You know, if I can't take care of this turtle anymore, do I know of somebody else who can? If this turtle gets sick, am I able to have access to a veterinarian? So there are a lot of things that go into keeping turtles as pets. So I'm going to say that no, I don't, like, I am not against keeping turtles as pets. Whether or not the keeping and breeding of turtles helps populations or hurts populations, we have seen many examples on both sides. And a lot of that has to do with market dynamics and this, you know, this fluctuating market. And that market fluctuates on not just an annual basis, but it can, you know, it can happen at the drop of a dime, so to speak. So it is something that can be talked of almost ad nauseum. I almost just talked about it ad nauseum, but I could talk about it greatly in length. And I know there's probably many out there who would like to put their own opinions into the chat. And I welcome you to put those opinions, because we can all learn from each other. And there are scenarios in which captive breeding, you know, very much has likely offset the decline of poaching. And then there's also scenarios where captive breeding has actually made that animal more desirable. So more animals are collected out of the wild to become founder stock for these, for breeding populations for the pet trade. So there's a lot of things to think about in that regard. And it's something that, you know, maybe there's not a right answer. Maybe it's something that is like science, it's constantly evolving. And I think that's where we can leave it, is at a shade of gray. So thank you, Nathan. Thank you very much for that question.
Next question from Timothy Stewart's daughter, Juniper.
Juniper, great name.
How old on average can a tortoise live?
Oh, I love that question. So how old on average? Well, Juniper, it really depends on the species. And there are species of turtles and tortoises out there who we're still learning about how long they can live for. The oldest turtles and tortoises on Earth are believed to live up to about 200 years old. The oldest known tortoise on Earth right now is this very lovable Aldabra tortoise, who lives on the island of St. Helena off the west coast of Africa, and his name is Jonathan. And somebody double check me, but I think Jonathan is 189 years old this year. So yeah, if you're a Jonathan lover out there, you'll have to double check that for me. But tortoises can live to be a very old age like that. But then there are also species who may live just to be, 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, 80, 90. There are many species out there whose lifespans are very comparable or basically the same as an average human lifespan. And that also kind of goes back into the last question of, keeping turtles and breeding turtles is every time a turtle hatches, that is another potentially 40 years, 80 years, 150 years of life to take care of. So that's a really great question, Juniper, and thanks for asking. David, do we have any other questions?
Oh, absolutely. The next one comes from Jessica, and I can answer that myself. And she asks, how can we organize a Drink Beer, Save Turtles event in my city, in Miami Beach? Jessica, that would be by contacting me, sending me an email at dhedrick@turtlesurvival.org. Quite often, we partner with local zoos or local chapters of the American Association of Zookeepers to put these events on in cities around the country and around the world. We are working on that as well and trying to get some events started up in the UK. So anyone who is an international viewer who is interested in this, send me an email also. The next question from Sally Leff. How do you become a turtle conservationist? Is there certification or something similar?
All right, another one. Great question. And what I can say is, there's not really, and David, I think you can kind of attest to this. There's not really one path. There's oftentimes not two paths. There's many paths to becoming a turtle conservationist. For instance, my road to get here with the TSA is one that's very winding. I've loved turtles ever since I was a kid, but there was a point in my life where all I wanted to do was be a hockey player. And then all I wanted to do after that was act on the stage and in film. And then I decided, you know what? I am going to, life gave me all these little signs that I really need to turn my life back to what I love the most, and that's animals and conservation and teaching people about these animals. And for me, I started volunteering at a very young age. So if I were to kind of set somebody on a course, one, it would be, take a look at this slide. Okay, start becoming as knowledgeable as you can, because knowledge is power. Okay, that's so cliche, but knowledge is an asset. Okay, the more knowledgeable you are about a certain subject, the more of an asset you are to, say, an organization. Volunteer as much as you can, because so much, especially in this day and age, more and more, is that your skill sets that you build, and especially looking at your drive, is so important to being able to climb the ladder to get to where you want to be in life. Whether that's a turtle conservationist or a tiger conservationist, or a marine mammologist, just as a few examples. Volunteer as much as you can. Try to get internships. Before the TSA, after I graduated college, I was an instructor at a university. a job which I loved very, very much, and was very grateful to have. And then I moved on to become a zookeeper at the Houston Zoo. And then from there, I went on and did some basically short time work as an eco tour guide, right up until about the point that TSA approached me. Very fortunate, fortunate for me, and I hope for them too, that interested if I'd like to work for them. So it was a very long and winding road, and I know David, could speak that his road was very winding as well. So there are many places to get to the place you want to be, and the biggest thing you can do is to show the drive, to show the passion, and to gain as much knowledge as you can on your own and through learning from other people, so that you're an asset to an organization like the TSA, or like the Wildlife Conservation Society, or Rainforest Trust, or Center for Biological Diversity, or Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Fund. I could go on and on naming all these great conservation organizations. But I think I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for that question.
All
David,
right,
next question.
From Mark. Mark asks, are red-eared sliders the most invasive turtle species?
So red-eared sliders, yes. I would. I'm just going to put it out there and say yes. Red-eared sliders are the most invasive turtle species due to their proliferation by the pet trade for many, many decades. The breeding of red-eared sliders for pets began early in the 20th century. During the mid 20th century, I know that my father and those of his generation very much called them the dime store turtles, because you went to the dime store and you got your little red-eared slider. And they continue to be bred and sold around the world as pets. They're also bred for food in different places, but they have a tendency to get a little bit larger than most people think, and their care can also be a little bit more than most people intended. So your tiny little green turtle eventually becomes, in many cases, a 10 or 11-inch turtle that has much greater needs than it did when it was the size of a $50 or a large coin piece. And so they have been released. And the interesting thing about it is that, and I sometimes I joke that, someday when all the other animals are gone and, humans are gone off this planet, the red-eared slider will be basically the nebulous from which all other life comes, because they have shown such adaptation to different climates, different environments, different habitats. Red-eared sliders now live, although they're not yet successfully living in, they live in Alaska, but are not yet known to successfully reproduce there. We'll see, that may change in the future. They are known from the fjords of Norway and Sweden. They're known from the lakes of Japan and the Koreas. You can go into some of the deepest jungles of Indonesia and South America and find a red-eared slider. So yes, they have proliferated around the world and are widely regarded as the most invasive species of turtle. So, great question.
All right, we're nearing the hour and a half mark in total
Yeah, I
for
think
the
we'll
webinar.
take another question or two, and then
And I think that last question was a great lead in to this one, which might be a good one to wrap up on.
okay,
And this one is from Taylor.
okay.
And Taylor says, after talking about the fossil record and the past of turtles, what do you see in the future of turtles, and particularly in their relationship with humans?
I I need to get out my crystal ball for that one, which is of course a cup with a TSA koozie, which you can buy in our web store. Another shameless plug. So the future of turtles, and with regard to the fossil record. So evolution is a constant process, and there are evolutionary mechanisms at play right now. Um, the changes in climate, changes to the landscape, turtles and other wildlife's ability or inability to adapt to those changes. Or maybe there was, those human induced changes never occurred at all. Maybe humans never existed. Evolution is a constant process. And so you're going to have species that naturally live on, and you're going to have species that maybe were never large in population to begin with. And, slowly their range and their populations retract, and they undergo a natural process of extinction. Unfortunately, right now, because the world population is growing at such a rate, we're almost to 8 billion people. Um, is that there is no question about it. We are impacting turtles everywhere and wildlife and ecosystems everywhere. And so, what will turtles' response be to that? And I think that's something that that's something that we are in the process of learning. It could also be something that, because these processes can take a long time to occur, it's something that we may never see in our lifetimes. We may never see in the duration of humanity's existence here on Earth, when the red-eared slider is still there. But, I'm quite sure that turtles will continue to be on this planet, and that at some point they very well will have different evolutionary advantages to the habitat in which they reside in 1,000 years from now, 5,000 years from now, 1,000,000 years from now, than they do now. And again, there's a lot there can. I'm not going to say debate, but there's a lot of perspectives that can come in there. There's various philosophies, and there's also questions of how quickly how quickly do we see these? We see animals adapt, but we also see evolutionary traits occur in some species in a very quick amount of time. So, what the future holds is anyone's guess, but that's why science is so important, so that we can continue to acquire data sets, so that we can look for these processes of evolution as they occur. So I think that, yeah, that was a really great question to ask and to end on, because I think that can spur more conversation, and I hope there's some conversation going on in the chat. And speaking of conversation, our next webinar is going to be May 18th, and that is going to be entitled Tales from the Field. We are going to have a panel discussion of some of the world's preeminent and up-and-coming turtle biologists and conservationists, and it's very much going to be a Q&A between the viewers and the panelists. And this is going to be a really great question to also, again, ask some of those questions that you had. And, you know, you may get different answers than you got today. Or like the question, for instance, is, how, you know, how do you become a conservationist? What road did one take? Well, with our panel, you know, with our panel, let's say we have 7 panelists, 8 panelists. I'll bet there's going to be 7 to 8 very different answers. So please tune into that. Pay attention to our e-newsletter, our social media, and our website and other forms of communication. And it's been a joy having you all tune in. It's been a joy listening to your questions and being able to respond. And if you have anything else you'd like to say, or if you have a disagreement with me, I would love to hear it. Or if you have something that you're agreeable on and you just want to chat more about it, well, shoot, that's what I use my long, long car drives for. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great night, a great morning, a great afternoon, depending on where you're coming from, and turtle on. Thank you very much. And David, thank you very much for always being my co-pilot in turtledom.
Always a blast.